Hi Mariners kids, welcome to another fun-filled day of VBS. Are you ready for another great Bible story? Well, today you're actually going to hear about two Bible characters, not just one, two. But before we start, I need everyone to do something with me. Yes, you need to do it. Even though I'm not there, I need you all to participate. Everyone take a really big, deep breath. Ready? Let's do it one more time, just in case some of you weren't actually doing it. One more time. Deep breath in. All right, now why did we do that? We did that because that shows that you are here. You are made for this moment right now, which is going to go right into today's Bible story. Our bottom line today is you belong. Turn to your neighbor and say you belong. Yeah, do it. Okay, turn to your next neighbor and say, you belong. You belong. You were made for this moment right now in this time. So our first Bible story, we're going to hear about a girl who had bold faith and was made for a moment, and she was used by God to save a whole nation of people. Her name is Esther. Now, Esther lived with her relative Mordecai. She was an orphan, and they lived in an area that was not where their people were from. They were in a land that wasn't theirs. So, while they were there, the King Xerxes, I know, that's a crazy name, King Xerxes, he got mad at the queen one day and decided, you know what, I don't want her to be queen anymore. Just like that, she's not queen anymore. But then he got sad after that and decided, I'm lonely. What can I do? So his wise counsel said, bring all the beautiful women into the palace and pick a new queen. And do you know who was a part of that? Esther. Esther got put into that category with all those women. So at first she was already not in a place with her people, and now she was put in the palace. How do you think Esther felt there? Do you think she felt like she belonged? I would imagine if I were Esther, I would feel a little lonely, maybe a little scared, maybe confused, and I would be surrounded by a whole bunch of people who didn't believe in the same God that I believed in. That would be really, really hard. But do you know what happened? Esther went on to become the queen. That's incredible. Out of all the women, she was chosen to be the queen in that moment. Now, fast forward just a little bit, we're gonna have a new character come on the scene. His name is Haman. Can you all say Haman? Now, Haman is not a nice guy at all. In fact, Haman doesn't like Esther's people. He doesn't like them at all. And specifically, he really doesn't like Esther's relative, Mordecai. So Haman comes up with this plan, and he decides that he wants to wipe out all of Esther's people. Wipe them out completely. And the king goes along with it. You see, the king didn't know that Esther was a Jewish girl. So Mordecai, Esther's relative, catches wind of this, and he goes to Esther and says, Esther, you need to save your people. And Esther in that moment gets a little afraid. I would be too. You see, Esther couldn't just go see the king whenever she wanted to. In fact, if she went to go see the king and he didn't want her there, she could be put to death. Her life was literally on the line. But amongst all of that, Mordecai said, Esther, perhaps you were made for such a time as this. And Esther stepped into bold obedience for God and was able to be used by God to save an entire nation of people. Now that's the short story, but think about it for a second. Esther was in a place where she probably felt homesick. She probably felt like she didn't belong. But in that time, she was used by God. She was obedient, and she grasped onto the fact that she was made for that moment and was able to save a whole nation of people. Wow, that's incredible. All right, are you ready for our second story? Let's move on to a girl named Rahab. Now, Rahab also probably felt like she didn't belong. She was probably not the most popular person. There were probably some people who didn't like Rahab, but that didn't stop her from having bold faith also. You see, here's the deal. Rahab lived in what would be the promised land for the people of Israel. So this land was promised to them by God. And some spies were sent into the land to see what the area, to get the lay of the land, to see what was going on. And the king found out about that. Now, here's the deal. The people in Rahab's community, including the king, had heard about the God of the Israelites and how they had been saved, that he had split the Red Sea, that they were saved from the Egyptians, from slavery. So they had heard some pretty big things about a pretty big, amazing God. So they wanted to get rid of these spies. But Rahab was able to take in the spies and hide them and send the guards off in another direction. She also had heard about this big, great God, and in that moment had enough faith to know that it was a good idea to save these men. And do you know what happened? She would eventually say, "Hey, when you guys come to take the land, will you save my family?" And that's what happened. Rahab's family was saved because of her bold faith, because of her obedience. And even if she felt like she didn't belong in that spot, in that moment, her faith and obedience were able to save not only her, but her family. And do you want to know a really, really cool thing? This girl, who probably felt like she didn't belong, would go on to be in the lineage of Jesus. That's a pretty special thing. So here's what I want you all to think about. We all have moments where we feel like we don't belong. But remember, we took those breaths earlier. You are here. You are made for this moment. Jesus died for each and every one of you. Turn to the person next to you and say, Jesus loves you. He loves you so much that he came and died for you and rose again for you. And so whenever you feel like you don't belong, I want you to remember Esther, Rahab, and that Jesus loves you.